Let me introduce to you guys the Iridia Region, a brand new Pokemon Fakemon region created by Zitodex, who you can find on both Instagram and on Twitter. And of course, those are linked down in the description for you to check them out. Now, today's video is going to be a little bit different. So first of all, the art style that Zito uses for their Fakemon is very different to a lot of the other Fakemon videos and the regions that I've covered in the past, but the art is phenomenal and I'm sure you're going to love it. Second of all, this region is not yet complete, but I'm also going to show you kind of a bit of an artistic showcase on some of the work that Zitodex has done in the past, which will cover some amazing Pokemon fusions, some new Mega Pokemon, some commissions they have done. All of it is going to be great, so look forward to that too. But we're going to start with the Iridia region, of course, so let's get into the starter Pokemon. The grass-type starter is called Budimp and is the lemon sprout Pokemon. And this looks very cute. I love that its leaves are covering its entire face. You can only just see the eyes shining through. This Pokemon is coming out of the little pot, but that is very important to the rest of the line. When it evolves into Moglet, we can see that pot is very small now compared to how big the rest of the Pokemon is. It almost looks like it's got underwear on. But now that it's sprouted out of the pot, that actually reveals its sour and mischievous side that it has. But it changes quite a lot when it finally evolves into Ginkgo Gale, which is now a grass and fighting type Pokemon. It definitely looks a lot like a ninja. I love that the pot has now gone, but it's kind of reformatted into a kind of shoulder armor. So it's now protecting the Pokemon rather than just looking like underwear in the middle evolution. We can also see it's got a bamboo shoot there as a weapon as well. The fire type starter is called Cordeko and is based on a gecko. Now this Pokemon actually doesn't have any teeth, but it does have a big tail that it can use to explode to defend itself. So as you can see in this image here, the Pokemon's tail has exploded and it's been replaced by this smoke instead. It evolves into Salastar, which is now more of a newt rather than a gecko, and this Pokemon has exploded the entire back half of its body. Its tail and its back legs have exploded, but this Pokemon doesn't mind doing that at all. So lizards and geckos and a lot of animals similar to that actually drop off their tail as a defense mechanism, so it's using that inspiration here, but instead it is exploding them rather than just dropping it off. And I absolutely love its final evolution in Dracolisto, which is now a fire and dragon type Pokemon. The back half of this Pokemon has exploded, but it's revealed a smoky, mystic kind of head. Now, this head also has a mind of its own, like its pre-evolution, so it's actually like a two-headed Pokemon. We've got the head of the dragon, but also the head of the smoke as well. Then the water type starter is called Kelpin, and this is based on a seahorse. Apparently, this is a very beloved Pokemon. It is very cute. It's got a heart-shaped pattern on its chest, but it's also got a heart-shaped scale on its head as well. Then it evolves into Stalopin, which is kind of interesting now because now it's kind of half horse and half seahorse. We can see it's got horse hooves on the front legs, but it's still got like a seahorse kind of back half as well. Now this Pokemon can live in the water, but actually prefers to go onto the land as well. So those big red puffy cheeks that it's got are actually filled with water, so it can still use water type moves while it's on the land. And then its final evolution is Frostede, which is now a water and ice type Pokemon. It looks like it's evolved from a seahorse all the way to a horse now. It hasn't got any fins at all. It's actually lost its ability to swim, but this Pokemon can run on top of the water by freezing the water as it gallops using its hooves. All of these starter Pokemon are insanely well drawn and all have really interesting backstories as well, but I think I'm going to have to choose the fire type starter Dracolisto, but let me know down in the comments which you're going to pick. All right, let's move into Route 1 next. Now, this may be the cutest Route 1 bug Pokemon I've ever seen. This is a Rapple, the pure bug type, and of course is based on a spider. I love how adorable it is, but it's interesting how the abdomen is kind of like mummy wrappings, and the silk from this Pokemon is constantly coming out, and it actually uses this silk kind of like a bit of a trail, so wherever it goes out to explore, it follows the trail back to get back to its nest. It evolves into Kicnid, which is a bug and fighting type Pokemon. Now this has no venom inside it at all, like a spider would normally have, so that's why it's not a poison type, but it's actually developed the ability for hand-to-hand combat. And you can see those front legs are like little boxing gloves covered in silk there. It also uses its silk to attach itself down to the ground, as you can see in the picture there, to make sure that it can't get knocked down when fighting an opponent. Now the Route 1 rodent or normal type of the region is Kultia, which is the little baby form, and then we've got Chilbara, which is the evolved form. Now these are both ice and normal type Pokemons, obviously based on a capybara. They're very, very cute, especially Kultia. I think it's very cute. It's got a little pile of ice on its back, but as you can see, it evolves. That ice is covering most of its body now, and that's because it's constantly getting in and out of the water in this really cold climate. We can also see that there is some berries berries that are floating on the head and the back of the final evolution as well. And those berries are constantly being balanced. No matter what happens to this Pokemon, its goal is to keep those berries balanced on it. Then next we have Cabunya, which is a fire and normal type Pokemon. Now this is based on Todoroki from My Hero Academia, and you can definitely see that in the coloring on the face being half orange. I love that it's got a big flame coming off the orange side of its face as well. Then we have Sugarillo, which is a grass and dark type Pokemon. Now this is based on a bat. You can definitely tell by the ears and because it's hanging upside down, but also it looks like it's combined with a possum as well. That really long tail so it can hang onto that branch is definitely like a possum, but I think it's really cute how its wings that are covering its body look a lot like leaves, of course giving it its grass typing. Then next we have Dracatum, which is combining dragon and autumn together. It is a grass and dragon type Pokemon and actually comes in two different forms. It is obviously disguising like a pumpkin, but the different types are the one on the left, the creamy colored one, is actually a sweet flavoring because it's kind of based like candy corn, but then the orange one that's breathing fire is actually based on a ghost pepper, and of course that has a spicy flavoring. Then next is Melados, which is a bug and normal type Pokemon, and this is combining a bear but obviously with honey as well. We can see one of those hands is an entire beehive, and it's got honey covering that beehive and its head as well, because it actually covers itself in honey as an extra layer of protection. But it doesn't need much protection when it evolves into Combaluros, now looking a lot like a bear, but it's physically like a bear, but its behavior is more like a bee. So it has the combat tactics but also the aggressiveness of a bee, and it's covering its arms in honey, but that's so it can use it as a weapon now. Then Aquiti is a pure water type Pokemon. I think this looks adorable. I do love my cat Pokemon, but it's obviously very aquatic. You can tell in the name. You can see the background is obviously by the beach there as well. Now this Pokemon doesn't have any claws, but it does have very sharp teeth, and apparently it loves to bite. I also really enjoyed that it's got like a big fin on its back and on its belly as well. Looks like it'd be a very good swimmer as well as adapt on land, and we can see it's got some gills as well. It evolves into Ferrosail, which is now a water and ice type Pokemon, and the long tail that it's got is covered in ice and is very spiky as well, so it uses that as a bit of a weapon to whip around. This is based on a tiger shark, of course being a feline like a cat, like a tiger, but then a shark as well. Then next we have Gullible, and this whole line might be one of my favorites in the entire region. I love this. This is actually a split evolution, obviously based on a seagull at the moment, but this is a split evolution based on One Piece, so it can either evolve into a pirate or it can evolve into a marine. To start with though, this is a water and flying type Pokemon. We can see it's got a bandana. It does look very happy as well. So the first evolution is the marine. So this is a water and fighting type Pokemon. This is Granmaril. I absolutely love the massive chain and anchor that it's holding there. It's got the bandana. It's also got a massive scar on its face as well. But then the alternative evolution is the pirate version. This is Peliroger, which is now a poison and flying type Pokemon. It's definitely got that pirate captain hat going on. It's got a massive scar on its beak, but both of its legs have actually been turned into cannons now. And I think both of these evolutions are amazing. I can't pick between the two. And then next is Mikuni, which is a pure fairy type Pokemon. This looks so cute. I think it is absolutely adorable. Based on a fox, of course, but it's actually covered with delicate petals as well. And apparently seeing one of these is the indication that spring is about to start. And then evolves into Sukune, which is now a fairy and ghost type Pokemon. It's now become bipedal, but looks absolutely amazing. It's got a little cherry blossom on its arm there as well. It just looks really, really nice. Now, next I want to show you a new phenomenon that is part of the Iridia region, and that is called Aridian Fates. Now, if you breed two Pokemon that already exist together, they can create a brand new species of Pokemon. Now, if you were to breed a Pumpkaboo and an Applin together, it is going to create a Pumpling. So obviously a lot like an Applin, but instead of the worm inhabiting an apple, is inhabiting a pumpkin instead, which I think is such a cool idea. We can see like the eyes or the top bit of the Applin are part of the pumpkin now instead, and it's got that orange color as well. Unfortunately, the Applin does lose the dragon typing though, because this is just a pure grass type Pokemon. Our next example is a little bit of a different vibe. This is Honchkrow and Lucario together, and it creates Holuwa, which is a very interesting looking Pokemon. Lucario has already got its own kind of vibe here, but to intensify it with some dark typing, this is a dark and fighting type. It's got that Honchkrow hat, the coloring. It's even got like a kind of a shuriken as well. A whole new look here. Looks very, very cool, I think. Next, if you breed a Roserade with the Doublade, then you are going to get Flu Rage, which looks very very intense. It's got needle-like legs and arms as well that are very poisonous. This is now a steel and poison type Pokemon. It's got the Mask of Roserade, but obviously like the attacking intensity that a Doublade will have. Next, if you were to breed a Lurantis with a Sensor Scorch, then you are going to get Flamantis, which is a fire and bug type Pokemon. I love that it's got like the fiery mustache and fiery embers of the Sensor Scorch, but obviously the overall thing definitely does look like a bug, even though it's got that fire coloring of the reds and the oranges in there. And then if you get a Toxtricity and you breed it with a Scraggy, you're going to get Rebel Lizardo, which is a poison and fighting type Pokemon. Now this Pokemon is very rebellious and will actually refuse to go in a Pokeball. So I think having Scraggy and Toxtricity kind of fit that same vibe. I think putting them together to make a rebellious Pokemon definitely makes sense. I feel like the shape of the Pokemon is definitely like a Scraggy, but the coloring is definitely a lot like a Toxtricity. Next, we're going to go through some new Pokemon in the region that are actually evolved from previous Pokemon that already exist. So obviously this Pokemon here is evolved from Sunflora. This is called Astroflora, which is a dragon and grass type Pokemon. This definitely looks kind of more like a dinosaur, I guess, or kind of not just like a flower anymore. It's definitely got a bit of an animal vibe to it. It's got a really long neck, maybe like a Brachiosaurus, which is why I'm kind of getting that vibe there. But the end of its long tail has its own flower bud as well. But apparently it's developed such a long neck so it gets closer to the sun, which kind of makes sense for Sunflora, I think. Then next we have two new evolutions in this region. First is Breezeon, which is a pure bug type Pokemon. And it looks a lot like an Eevee, and it's apparently the same size as an Eevee, which is adorable, but it's definitely got lots of inspirations from bugs. It's got that giant tail, which is kind of like an abdomen of a bee. It's really stripy as well. It's got antennas at the front, but I think something very, very noticeable is that it actually has 6 legs, like an insect will have. And then the other new evolution is Mochion, the pure poison type Pokemon. This is obviously inspired by all the Mochi madness that happened in the DLC of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We can see the big ribbons coming off the body like the legendary trio within the DLC, which were obviously all poison types as well, so that kind of makes sense. And we have a screenshot here from Penny, who actually told us that Mochion was coming, so we should have seen this. And then we have a new evolution for Dipplin, which is called Apple Strike. So this is a poison and grass type Pokemon. Obviously, we've got the 2 heads now, but like Dipplin, it has that big stalk in the middle of it, as you can see there. But it's interesting that the apple is not really the focus anymore. The apple's quite small compared to how big the dragon heads are. You can see they've got little wings as well, and they're kind of wrapped around each other, surrounding that bush with the apple in the middle of it. Then next we have Gorochu, which is an electric and fire type Pokemon. This is the same name because Raichu was going to have a new evolution many generations ago that was going to be called Gorochu, so it's cool that we have a Fakemon for Gorochu now as well. It's got 2 massive tails there. It's got a big horn on its head, but you can see it's got flames coming off it as well. So despite Gorochu previously being an evolution from Raichu, this is actually now a split evolution from Pikachu. So if you use a Thunderstone on Pikachu, you get a Raichu, but if you use a Firestone on Pikachu, then you get Gorochu. Then next we have a new evolution for Slowpoke, one of the many split evolutions that are available. Now we know that we get a Slowbro when a Shelter clamps on the tail of a Slowpoke, but if a Wishcash clamps its tail onto a Slowpoke, it evolves into Slowmarina, which is now a water and fairy type Pokemon. So you can see this Wishcash covering most of the body here. It's not just the tail, it's the tail and the entire lower half of the body here. Then next we have Royal Ludon, which is a dragon and rock type Pokemon. This is an evolution, but I think it's kind of like a convergent evolution for our Duraludon. So kind of like Diglett and Wiglet, we have Duraludon and Royaludon. So this is definitely more so based on a castle now. We can see that with the body, with the arms. It's even got like the little fortress tops that you would see on castles all around this Pokemon. Going into some Aridian forms now. So first is Aridian Wobbuffet, which is actually a pure fighting type Pokemon now. And we know that Wobbuffet from Johto is a pure psychic type, so these have a constant rivalry. What I absolutely love is the shiny for this version, though. Obviously looking like the Johto version because it is bright blue. Next is Aridian Psyduck, which is now a pure psychic type Pokemon. It's definitely got the same vibe as a regular Psyduck, but we can see it's got like a bit of a flame. It's almost like a purpley pink kind of flame coming from the head there. And that's actually the psychic power leaking from its forehead. But instead of evolving into Golduck as a brand new evolution, which is called Sensei, which is now a psychic and fighting type Pokemon. Really interesting design here. Very different to Psyduck and Golduck. But apparently this Pokemon does not move much. They are constantly meditating, We can see those 3 fists that are roaming around the Pokemon. That's what's actually being controlled by the Sensei, and that's what it uses to battle with. Then next we have Aridian Marwa, which is now a fairy and fighting type Pokemon. This is actually based on Chun-Li from Street Fighter, and I absolutely love like the buns that it's got on its head. Instead of those massive jaws that the normal Marwa has 2 little ones instead. That's not really the focus of the Pokemon. It is now much more of a fighter. Again, has those wraps around the wrists. Then next we have an Aridian Diglett, which is now a pure fighting type Pokemon. There's lots of different Diglets and Wigglets all around, but this is very interesting because it's actually emerged from the earth now. You can see it's got legs and it's got arms, but it's now a pure fighting type, so we can't have it stuck in the ground if it's a fighting type. I absolutely love its evolution in Tough Trio. This is a fighting and ground type Pokemon. Again, emerged from the earth, but instead of having the Dugtrio with the 3 heads, it's like 2 of those heads are now hands and arms that it uses to fight. But this looks really, really cool how the amount of earth and grass and even flowers around it is part of the body. As much as I hate Alolan Dugtrio is my least favorite Pokemon in existence, this does have an Alolan form of Tough Trio as well, which kind of does look cool. And then Aridian Meowth, which is looking a lot like a mummy. Definitely looks Egyptian inspired, and the coin on the head is even like a scarab as well, which looks really nice. And this is now a pure ghost type Pokemon. Now we're going to go into a bit more of an artist showcase for the work of Zitodex, starting with some amazing fusions, as we can see here with our Turtwig and Groudon fusion. But unfortunately, that is the end of the Iridia decks for now. The artist is continually working on them, so it's a great time to go down to the description and follow them on Twitter and on Instagram to see all the updates, but to also see a lot more artwork from this artist as well. All of these ones I'm currently showing you now are commissions that they have done. So if you want to see more like that and more from the new region, make sure you go and follow them. This is also a great time to go and subscribe to my channel as well. I've just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I'm so hyped about that. But if you enjoy Pokemon and Fakemon content, make sure you chuck a cheeky like and a subscription to the channel. So we have 3 fused starters now. So Turtwig and Groudon, absolutely love this. Looking a lot like a Turtwig, but obviously the coloring, and I guess the shell and the spike is definitely from Groudon, hey. Then next we have our fire starter Cyndaquil, which is fused with Giratina. Those kind of like tendrils coming out are definitely from a Giratina, but the entire body shape is definitely from a Cyndaquil as well. It still keeps the cuteness of a Cyndaquil, which is quite nice. And then we have a water starter. We have Mudkip, which is now fused with Dialga. Looking a lot like a Mudkip in the body shape, but I think like the tail, the little, almost looks like a helmet on their head. The spikes on the gem on the chest, definitely looking a lot like a Dialga as well. So really interesting fusions that you can definitely see the 2 inspirations being forged together to make a new Pokemon. And then another fusion that the artist has done is a Charizard and a Abomasnow fusion, now being a fire and ice type Pokemon. You can see it's got the orange coloring kind of speckled throughout there, but it is definitely very icy. It's got an icy flame on the tail, but those wings are very icy as well. And of course, we know that Pokemon Legends ZA is coming up soon. So Zitodex has created a few new Mega Evolutions. Maybe these will come out in Legends ZA. We'll see. So first is Mega Talonflame, which looks very, very cool. That fire is just exploding from the tail there. And it's got those massive golden ribbons coming out as well, which is really nice. Next is Mega Lycanroc, which I absolutely adore. I love the Cerberus version of Lycanroc, having the 3 heads of Cerberus, but of course, those flames coming out as well, because it's now rock and fire type. Really, really cool inspiration and a really cool design. And then Mega Zoroark, which is looking amazing as well, dark and fire type. So it's got a massive long tail with a blue flame coming off it, which is really nice. And the blue flame coming off their head as well is also very, very nice. I've absolutely loved going through the Iridia region with you guys, and I cannot wait to see what else Zitodex comes up with for this region. My favorites were Arapel, Draco Callisto, Granmaril, and Palerodra. I cannot decide between the split evolutions. Let me know down in the comments what your favorites were. Thanks for watching to the end of the video, guys. If you want to check out some more Fakemon, check out these videos as well. Cheers.